Right now, in about 8 years, 1 out of every 2 lawns in America could be mowed by a machine that never gets tired, never complains about the heat, and never asks for a raise. That is not science fiction. That is the actual prediction coming from inside the robotics industry itself. And once you understand the technology behind it, the number stops sounding crazy and starts sounding almost conservative. But before we get to the machines, I want you to picture something strange. Somewhere in a lab in Europe, researchers actually built a test where they placed dead hedgehogs under 18 different robotic lawnmowers just to see what would happen. Yes, you heard that right. Real scientists, real robots, real hedgehog cadavers, all in the name of safety testing. We will come back to that because it tells you something important about how far this technology still has to go, even while it is exploding in popularity. For decades, robotic lawnmowers were treated as a gimmick. Expensive toys for tech enthusiasts with money to burn. You had to bury a wire around your entire property just so the robot would know where your lawn ended and your neighbor's begun. If that wire got cut by a shovel, an animal, or simple weathering, the whole system stopped working until someone dug it up and fixed it. That era is functionally over, and almost nobody outside the industry has noticed yet. The shift happening right now is being driven by 3 technologies working together, and each one on its own is fascinating. The first is something called RTK, or real-time kinematic positioning. Normal GPS, the kind in your phone, can be off by several meters. That is fine for finding a restaurant, but useless for a robot that needs to know exactly where your flower bed starts. RTK technology corrects that signal in real time using a fixed reference point, and it can pinpoint a location down to a single centimeter. That is the same caliber of precision used in surveying equipment and precision agriculture, now shrunk down and priced for your backyard. The second technology is machine vision, essentially giving these robots actual eyes. Cameras and sensors let the mower recognize a garden hose, a child's toy, a sleeping dog, or the edge of a pool, and react before making contact, instead of blindly bumping into everything like the older bump-and-turn models. The third piece is constant connectivity, usually over 4G, which means the mower is never really working alone. It is talking to the cloud, receiving route optimizations, sending you alerts on an app, and in some cases learning from data gathered across thousands of other mowers doing the same job in different yards. Put those 3 things together, and you get a robot that does not just follow a fixed loop anymore. It actually makes decisions. It figures out the most efficient path to cut your specific lawn, adjusts on the fly when something changes, and requires almost no burial, no wiring, and dramatically less setup than the previous generation. Industry analysts have been tracking this shift closely, and the numbers back up the hype. The global robotic lawnmower market alone was valued at roughly $9.3 billion in 2025, and it is projected to more than double, reaching around $22 billion by 2033, according to Grandview Research. Zoom out to the broader lawnmower market as a whole, including gas and electric models, and you are looking at growth from about $35 billion to over $63 billion in the same window. Robotic models are consistently flagged as the fastest-growing segment inside that entire industry. Here's where the story gets genuinely interesting, though, because the person making the 50% prediction is not some neutral outside analyst. His name is Terry Ma, founder and CEO of Sunseeker Robotics, a company that has been building outdoor robots since 2009 and now operates in more than 40 countries and over 5,000 retail stores worldwide. Earlier this year, Sunseeker closed a Series B funding round worth roughly $74 million. In other words, the person telling you robotic mowers are about to take over half of American lawns runs a company that profits enormously if that prediction comes true. That does not mean he is wrong. It means you should treat the number the way you would treat any bold forecast from someone with skin in the game. Interesting, worth tracking, but not gospel. So let's actually stress test the claim, using real numbers instead of vibes. Now, let's talk about the part nobody wants to say out loud, the jobs angle. Because this is where the story stops being purely fun and starts touching real people's paychecks. The landscaping services industry in the United States employs well over 1 million workers. That is not a small niche. That is a massive labor force, and it has been growing at an average rate of about 6.5% per year between 2020 and 2025. At the same time, companies in this industry report chronic difficulty finding and keeping workers, especially for physically demanding outdoor labor performed during extreme summer heat. That combination, rising demand plus a shrinking available workforce, is exactly the kind of gap automation loves to fill. Executives in the space are framing autonomous mowers as a tool that takes over the most repetitive, most exhausting, most heat-exposed tasks, freeing up human workers for higher-value jobs like design, client relationships, and complex landscaping work a robot cannot yet handle. That framing is not entirely dishonest. But history shows us that when a task gets automated, the total number of hours humans spend doing that specific task tends to shrink, even if the industry around it keeps growing. Robot vacuum cleaners did not eliminate the cleaning industry, but they absolutely changed what entry-level cleaning work looks like. The same pattern is likely coming to residential and light commercial mowing crews, starting with smaller lightweight units and gradually scaling up to heavier equipment as the technology matures over the next several years. Now let's get to the question you are probably actually here for. Should you buy one? Here's where the industry's polished marketing runs directly into blunt, unfiltered reality. Because we do not have to guess what real buyers think, we can read what they actually said. One commenter described using a robotic mower for 5 years and being the only person in his entire neighborhood with one, calling the free time it gave back genuinely life-changing, especially avoiding hours of work under direct summer sun. Another buyer in Florida, mowing a quarter-acre lot, called the accuracy and cut quality impressive enough that he would buy a second unit without hesitation. That is the upside. Real people, real satisfaction, real time saved. But scroll down further in the same conversation, and the tone shifts fast. Multiple readers pointed out that current units sell for around $1,000 on major retail platforms, and flatly said that price alone is enough to keep most households away, especially when a solid traditional self-propelled mower costs a fraction of that. One reader put it bluntly, saying the floodgates for mass adoption will only open once robotic mowers cost roughly the same as a standard walk-behind gas mower. Right now, that gap is still significant. This mirrors almost exactly what happened with robot vacuum cleaners and smart thermostats a decade earlier. Early adopters paid a premium for convenience, while everyone else waited on the sidelines, watching, judging, calculating whether the cost actually made sense for their specific situation. Prices only came down gradually as manufacturing scaled and competition increased. And that same slow curve is almost certainly what robotic mowers are facing now, regardless of how confident any single CEO sounds in a press release. And this brings us back to those hedgehogs, because the story is not just about price. It is also about whether the technology is actually safe for everything living in your yard. Researchers at institutions studying European hedgehog populations, working alongside teams connected to the University of Oxford, developed a formal safety test specifically because injured hedgehogs were showing up at wildlife rehabilitation centers with cuts consistent with mower blades. In one striking study, scientists tested 18 different robotic mower models against hedgehog cadavers positioned in different postures and weight classes to measure exactly how much physical damage each design caused. The results were genuinely unsettling. None of the 18 models tested could detect the presence of a smaller, dependent juvenile hedgehog from a distance. Every single unit had to physically make contact with the animal before any kind of reaction occurred, and by then it was already too late. Some models caused significant visible damage on contact, while other designs, thanks to features like pivoting blades and raised skid plates, consistently caused little to no harm at all. That gap between the safest design and the most dangerous design was enormous, and it exposes a real blind spot in how these machines currently sense the world around them. Camera-based obstacle detection is genuinely impressive when it comes to identifying a garden hose, a bicycle, or a large stationary object. But a small, low-profile, slow-moving creature hiding in tall grass at dusk is a completely different kind of challenge. And most current sensors simply are not built to catch it reliably. Manufacturers are aware of this gap and have started introducing features like scheduled, quiet hours that avoid mowing during dawn and dusk, when small nocturnal animals are most active, alongside sensor upgrades aimed specifically at improving low-profile object detection. But as of today, no model on the market has fully solved the problem. And that detail rarely, if ever, makes it into a glossy marketing pitch about the future of automated lawn care. So here's where all three threads finally connect. The technology genuinely has improved to a point where large-scale adoption is technically possible. Centimeter-level positioning, real machine vision, constant cloud connectivity, all working together in a package that barely resembles the clunky wired systems from a decade ago. The economic pressure on the labor side is real too, with over 1 million landscaping workers already stretched thin by demand that keeps climbing every single year, while extreme heat makes the job harder and harder to staff. But the 50% household penetration number within 8 years is a forecast made by someone whose company directly benefits from you believing it. And the actual buyers weighing in publicly are still hung up on a price gap that has not meaningfully closed yet, alongside safety questions that current sensor technology has not fully answered, whether that is a fence post, a sleeping pet, or a hedgehog hiding in the grass at dusk. Whether robotic mowers end up on half of American lawns by the early 2030s or stall out as a premium niche product for another decade probably depends less on how impressive the technology becomes and more on which happens first: prices dropping toward the cost of a regular mower, or manufacturers finally closing that safety gap well enough for regulators, insurers, and cautious buyers to stop hesitating. Either way, the machine quietly trimming your neighbor's lawn while nobody is watching is smarter, faster, and far more autonomous than anything that existed even 5 years ago. And that alone is worth paying attention to.